Hello? Hello? You can hear me? Very good. His Excellency President Ruto, the leaders of the AFC, all the other distinguished persons who are here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad you have allowed me to speak when I'm seated here, because in doing my push-ups, I strained my back, and I really want to talk to you comfortably, not in a hurry. I want to thank His Excellency President Ruto for organizing this conference, and the AFC for organizing it under the patronage of President Ruto. We have got a minister in Uganda, is called Otafuire. The Bantu ways of naming people, you gave a name which is actually a sentence. So Otafuire means that if you don't die, you will see good things in the end. Therefore, by not dying and having been involved in public affairs for the last 65 years, since 1960, I'm now going to beginning to see some waking up. When the manager from AFC was speaking, I said, this man is speaking my language now. And he's a bureaucrat. But he's speaking a language of revolution. This has been our problem. The discrepancy between revolution and betrayal, really, because Africa has been betrayed in the last 70 years. Sudan was the first to get independence in 1955. It is now 70 years since we started getting independence. But you look at the GDP of Africa. The GDP of Africa is now 3.6 trillion. All of us, imagine, the whole of Africa. Egypt, South Africa, Algeria, all of us. 3.6 trillion. And we are 1.5 billion people now. And our land area is umushandete kawaya umusho are mugambire. I'm speaking in Kikuyu, you will not understand. So, the land area of Africa is 4 times the size of the United States. And our population is now 5 times the population of the United States of America. But our GDP is 3.6 trillion, and GDP of the USA is 32 trillion. So, all of us together, in terms of wealth, are only 10% of the wealth of the United States. This is a big shame. Why should this be the case? There's been some talk that there was no other way in the past. I don't believe that. If you look at China, you people, you can go and get the figures. China was very, very poor, very underdeveloped when the communists took over. But they were able, because of discipline and clarity, were able to save and start investing in their economy, even when they were still very poor. So it is ideological. It's not just money. It's not money. This is more than money. We had a conference here about 10 years ago, here in Nairobi, here, with the Prime Minister of Japan, who died, the one who died. We had a conference here. And in that conference, I made this written speech, which they would distribute to the delegations. And in this speech, I pointed out that, and I'm glad the speaker is here, His Excellency President Ruto, the person from the IFC, our commissioner, the man from the islands, the minister, who originally came from Uganda long, long ago. They all talked about it. We should not look at these issues in isolated ways. This was the problem in the 1960s and even 70s. They would pick one item, rural development. Then they talk about that, talk about that, talk about that. Then after some time, they say, no, 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 women empowerment. Then women empowerment. Then education. Then just like that. But in that speech, I pointed out that in my view, there are 10 strategic bottlenecks. And I can repeat them for you here. Number one, is ideological orientation. Because we are talking of interregional infrastructure. But how will you have interregional infrastructure if there are wars going on? And these wars are based on ideological bankruptcy. People believe in sectarianism. They believe in the politics of identity, of tribe, of religion. The wars which are going on in the Middle East, what is their ideological base? What are they fighting for? We know all those people. The Iranians, the Israelis, the Americans, we know all of them. We have good relations with them. But you can see that the mistakes which they have in their thinking is the one which causes all this suffering. Mistakes, ideological. What is crucial? Is it because I am a Munyankore? You see, that's why I was speaking in Kikuyu. I wanted somebody to bring me my coffee. So, in my view, I welcome these very good technical, professional ideas about infrastructure. But I think if we only focus on infrastructure alone, we may not go far. Because there are wars. There are wars in Congo, there are wars in South Sudan, there are wars in all these different places, Somalia. So how will you have infrastructure if people are fighting for wrong reasons? Therefore, strategic obstacle number one in this booklet, which I will give you, was ideological disorientation. Why do you believe in tribalism and religious sectarianism? I am a cattle keeper. I'm like these Maasais who are dancing here. I produce milk, I produce beef, I produce bananas. But people in my tribe don't buy from me. Why? Because they also have the same products. I have milk, they have milk. They don't buy from me, I don't buy from them. I have beef, they have beef. So who buys from me? The people of Kampala, many of whom are not my tribe. The people of East Africa. So my prosperity is supported more by Uganda as a country and East Africa and Africa than by my own small group. If therefore you have somebody killing people just because of religion or tribes, how will you have the corridors we are talking about? That is strategic obstacle number one, which we pointed out here when we met here with Mr. Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan. Because of number one, because of ideological fragmentation, then you end up with weak states. No army. Why is there insecurity in Africa? Some of these countries have no armies. Why don't they have an army? Because they cannot build one. Why? Because part of or ideology. You want to have a highly paid army when you don't have money. How will you have an army? In Uganda, we fought for no money for 17 years. From 1971 to 1987, I was fighting for no pay, for patriotism. So how would you have a paid army when you don't have money? You don't have the state to pay. So therefore, because of that, and then when you recruit soldiers, instead of joining the national army, they join the clan armies like in Somalia. Now, if you don't have army, you don't have police, how would you have peace? So, number one, ideological disorientation leads to number two, weak states. Then you come to the underdevelopment of the human resource, education. There, many Africans have gone to school now. Many of them we have got more educated people than before. But they need these other factors. But in some cases, it is also a problem. Then number four is what we are talking about here. We talked about this here 10 years ago. What we are talking about now, the infrastructure, is number four here in this booklet. It is very true that if you don't have infrastructure, how will you have industrialization? How will you have modernization? Now, on infrastructure, we are moving very well now. From the comments of His Excellency President Ruto, from the comments of the AFC, we are all moving in the right direction. The only clarification I want to make is that there are core cost pushers. If you want your economy to succeed, you must identify the core cost pushers, which push costs in production. One of them is transport. Transport, especially the railway and the water transport. So if you build the railway, you must build it with either government money, who are not looking for high profits and quickly, or with patient capital, patient private capital. Because if you have got very high cost of transport of the rail, how will you compete? How will you compete? How will the companies make money? The other cost pusher is electricity. In Uganda, my people behind my back, they made a mistake and they went with a group called what? I don't know what they called them. And they built a dam, one of the dams on the Nile, using private money. When it came to the price of the electricity, production was 16 cents per kilowatt hour. How can you make money? How can that electricity help the economy? It almost caused a civil war because they didn't tell me, they went behind my back. But the dams were built with government money. We are able to produce electricity at 4.8 cents, American cents per kilowatt hour. Then the old dams, the ones we have already paid for, the cost is 1.2 cents, American cents. So there, you must be very careful. It must either be government money or patient capital. Not people who are looking for quick money. Then the next, it is the railway and electricity and water transport. And then the cost of money in the banks. That's why in Uganda, I had to keep the Uganda Development Bank. I privatized the Uganda Commercial Bank because they persuaded me that they confused me. They said, if you privatize, private capital is efficient, they will do what? I said, okay. But you know, I am a bushman. So I go cautiously. So I said, okay, you take the Uganda Commercial Bank. They privatized it. The interest rate is now 25%. How can somebody, that's how you get what His Excellency was talking about, the perfume importers. They are the ones who make money from 25% interest loans. A manufacturer cannot make profit with 25%. Or a farmer. So, rail transport, electricity, cost of money for manufacturing and agriculture. I would want you to look at it. The cost of labor is still not high. Cost of labor, the salaries are not still high. Those are not a problem. Now it comes down to the pipeline. I would not have bothered His Excellency Ruto so much for fuel, especially people who are driving on the road. If the fuel is expensive, don't travel, stay at home. Where are you going? I'm not really worried about you. What I was worried about was jet fuel. Because jet fuel is not only just for travel, it is for tourism. If the cost of the jet fuel is very expensive, the tourists will not come. It is for export, because the aircraft also export. So that's why I had to establish this as a route that the governments need to keep a voice in the pipeline. The governments of Kenya, government of Uganda must keep a voice in the pipeline, mainly because for the jet fuel. People are going for nightclubs, I don't care so much about them. If you don't have the money, stay at home. Where are you going? So therefore, with the infrastructure, but for instance, for the roads, once we have got enough infrastructure of the railway and the water, because there's also water transport. Water transport, Lake Victoria, the River Nile, Lake Albert. Once we have those, the railway, electricity, for the roads, we can actually have toll roads. Yeah. That's what I'm telling our American friends. Come and make money on the toll roads. I will not welcome you in the railway if you are greedy for profits. But for the toll roads, you build the road and charge it. Those who can pay, those who can use the smaller national roads. So that's what I would say on the infrastructure. Now, the other bottleneck, because of these bottlenecks, then you end up what our leaders were talking about here. Export of raw materials, unprocessed. When you export unprocessed, when you export cotton unprocessed as lint, you get $1.2 per kilogram. That 1 kilogram, if you make cloth out of it and garments, you will get $15. The same kilogram for which you got 1.2. If you weave, you spin, weave, and get garments out of it, you'll get $15. Coffee. A kilo of coffee unprocessed is $2.5. The same kilo processed will go for $25 or even $40. So the Africans have been the mega donors. I don't know why they are never called in conferences for donors in Paris, because they are the mega donors. In every kilogram of coffee, you are donating $40. And they don't know. You find the Africans there putting on ties, moving around. They are not bothered. So therefore, without electricity, without the railway, you cannot industrialize. And you go on with the raw materials. That's why you have got this stunted economy. The other day, I was with the delegation of military people from Tanzania. They gave me a word of stunted in Swahili. Does somebody have that word in Swahili kabisa? Stunted growth. Mtoto ambaye hakue. They told me, but I forgot. Last night I was with the delegation from Tanzania. I know it in my language, kuningama, but get it in Swahili. So the African economy is stunted because of these mistakes, because of these hemorrhages. Then, number 6, fragmented market. If you produce, who buys? I've told you that my tribe cannot help me with, I am a capitalist also. I sell my milk. But in Uganda, it is bought by the Ugandans in Kampala. Not in my tribal area so much. Then East Africa. That's why I've been begging His Excellency Ruto, my young sister Samia, please, ruhusu maziwa yangu yaje huko bila vizuizi. Now, if you don't have a market, how will you attract capital? And the ones who invest in your country, how will they succeed? China opened in 1978. I'm comfortable, I'm all right. China, I have the figures here by that time. China opened in 1978, opened the economy. Our African economies were open all the time, all that time. But by the time I made this speech here, 10 years ago when we were with the Prime Minister of Japan here, by that time China had attracted $2.6 trillion, while Africa had attracted only $0.65 trillion. Why? One of the magnets is the big Chinese market inside China. One of the big magnets of attracting. So, to go on with these fragmented economies is a very big mistake. And that's why I'm very happy with His Excellency Ruto denouncing the tariff barriers that stop trade among our countries. Then the other bottleneck here, underdeveloped services, tourism, banking, professional services, and so on. Underdeveloped agriculture, number 8, bottleneck number 8. Uganda has got a little bit of agriculture. We never import food. So when I saw people crying that there was a war in Ukraine, is the war in Uganda here? It's in Ukraine. Why are you crying? Or that we shall have no food to eat. Not in Uganda, we always eat. We have enough food. We have got so much food that we don't know where to put it. Market is our problem. But in other parts of Africa, you get this problem of no food. Amazing. And the food they buy from outside is very dangerous. Bad food, with hormones and so on. Now, in the 1960s, we had made some mistakes also. We, the African people. You must have heard that in Uganda, Idi Amin grabbed private capital, the property of the Indians. And in other countries, they had a practice of what they were calling nationalization, kutaifisha. That one also was a mistake, strategic mistake. But I'm glad that when we came into government, because I was from the revolutionary side, I had enough credentials to say no, give back all the property of the Indians. Let them get their properties back. Because my people, some of them are here, they were saying, no, we must keep the properties of Indians. I said, but if you don't give back the Indians their properties, who will trust you that in future, if you invest in your country, you will not also grab his property, that like you grabbed the one of the Indians. So I persuaded them, we gave back all the property of the Indians, miserable properties, just 4,000 of them. Not much. Kisirani too. Now, around Kampala alone, in the whole of Uganda, we had only 4,000 Asian properties. 4,000 in the whole of Uganda. But now around Kampala alone, we have got 2 million properties of the Ugandans, plus also our Indians who came back. So that was also another mistake. You, the people, should remember that. that issue of confiscating properties of private sector was one of the mistakes that delayed us. Now, finally, of course, the final bottleneck was lack of democracy, because that was also another problem. Because if you don't have, I see some people trying to say democracy is not a luxury. No, democracy forces you to be accountable, to go to the people and win their support. Recently we had elections, and where my people listened to my advice, we performed very well. When they implement what we like, getting rid of poverty in the whole country. How can you preserve poverty in the whole country? It's not a national park that you are preserving. So now, therefore, I want to conclude by saying that we have the money here. Yes, we are getting more money. Now our speaker from AFC gave a very good example. The pension funds, what are they being used for? NSSF in Uganda has got a lot of money, but they just invest in treasury bills. The government borrows from national fund and eats the money. They borrow for eating. So our expert has really challenged you people. You heard him, that the NSSF money should be not for eating. Because if you treasury bills, they are borrowing to pay debts, to pay salaries, to pay what? They are not borrowing for I call infrastructure omsomyo in our language. Omsomyo means the bone marrow. You know, the English don't have enough words. They couldn't describe that part of the body. The bone marrow, they call it bone marrow. But in our language, we call it omsomyo or omshokoro in one of the other languages. So the omshokoro of the economy is the railway, transport, electricity, the cost of, plus of course peace and so on. So if the NSSF money is used for eating, not to build part of the bone marrow, because the English don't have enough words, it's a very big mistake. But also, the government, our countries can deliberately save. We have been funding, we set up a science innovation fund, where I have been funding government innovations. We have built an electric vehicle called Chira motor vehicle, and its sister vehicles, the bus and the other smaller vehicles, using the government money, government capital. So now we are getting demands, getting orders for that electric vehicle. We are to build our own vehicles, because I had begged the Japanese to come and assemble in Uganda. They refused. So I said, okay, bye-bye. Now, when I started making my vehicles, some of the Japanese came. So want to assemble. I said, no, too late. I will not allow any assembly in Uganda. You must manufacture, not assemble. The vaccines, we have been funding them ourselves. I'm going to launch a anti-tick vaccine the day after, a few days to come. So we have the capital. It's not enough, but we have it. If we constrain consumption, we can get the capital. So therefore, I'm very happy with the initiative of His Excellency Ruto. Like on the issue of the refinery, what he told you, in Uganda, I have banned the export of unprocessed minerals. All of them, I have banned them. They have been praying for me to die or something like that, but no export of tin, no export of copper. They are all there in the ground. But slowly we are getting investors. Iron ore. Can you imagine? Some Indian guy from India, the New Delhi, had come to made a deal with my people to sell our iron ore at $47 per ton. The iron ore of Uganda is the best in the whole world. It is about 70% pure. So, when you sell iron ore, somebody goes and makes it into steel. He earns, at one time he would earn $900. And you export all the jobs. But I stopped them. And I'm glad that some of the investors from Kenya, encouraged by His Excellency Ruto, are now investing in the steel industry in Uganda. Now, on the issue of petroleum, we found it long ago, 2005. But up to now, it's now about to come out of the ground. What was the reason? Disagreeing with the oil companies, Total. They were telling my people who would tell me, refineries don't make money. Hey, they don't make money. How about the ones who build them? Why do they build them? Then when I checked, the refinery in Uganda actually is very, very profitable. Do we have somebody from that sector? From energy? Do we have somebody here? Minister, do you remember the internal rate of return? Huh? 14. You will confirm. Or you're going to confirm. The internal rate of return is very high of the refinery in Uganda. So, but because I'm also tactical, because the Total were insisting that they should take all the oil. Why do you take the oil? The users are here. Why do you take it? So, no, there's no money in the refinery. I said, no, you are lying. Now, eventually we agreed that we build a small refinery of 60,000 barrels per day. What do you call this? You build, then you add on. There's a way they say it in English. You build one unit, then you add on. Add on another 60,000, and that my refinery would have first score on the oil, and then the balance you can export through Tanzania. Fine. Now recently, and then that ECOP, it's now called ECOP, East African Pipeline. Later on, we could see that people of Congo could use it if they want. because there's some oil there on the other side. People in South Sudan can use it because they have got oil there. Now, this oil of the Calabat is one of the 5 provinces. We have got 4 other provinces of oil. This is just one of them. So therefore, the 13%, the internal rate of return is 1.3. Okay. And what is the internal rate of return of others in the world? Find out. So therefore, when His Excellency Ruto recently sent me a message, I supported it, that the surplus oil, which we had given to Total to take through Tanga to I don't know where, be our contribution to the refinery in Tanga, number 1. Then later on, we can add the petroleum from the other Congo, from South Sudan, and also these other provinces, because the one of Uganda, where we have the oil now, is only 40% of the Arbat area. There is another 60% which we have not which is not yet fully explored. So there's more oil in Uganda, both within Arbat and in the other provinces. So therefore, I support this idea of the Tanga refinery. We shall maintain our small refinery because we have already gone ahead. We are very far. We can't stop. The question is, how do you those refineries, if you don't want to create kwa Kiswahili tunasema wivu, jealous. Tunasema wivu, if you don't want wivu, it's better that if the countries have ownership together, like in because that's what we were doing in the past. We were calling it East African Common Services. We were owning the ports together, East African harbors, East African Railway, East African Airways, East African Development Bank. It was all East African. If it is all ours, then it is ours. Then it is not either me or you. Hakuna kushindana. You are all together. So with these few words, you should be careful. Don't invite old men for. Don't give audience to old men, because you do so at your own risk. With these few words, it is now my pleasure to participate in the meeting.